Good morning and welcome to the virtual Propane Expo presentation, Let's Turn Tank Monitoring Upside Down. My name is Brian Humphrey. I'm with Insight Platform Partners. We named the presentation Let's Turn Tank Monitoring Upside Down to really better describe our program and our concept that we are really promoting here, not just for our customers, but for the entire industry. We believe that we can use tank monitoring technology to come at the data from a different angle, especially using our proprietary data and our proprietary products. So without further ado, let's dig in. Before we get too far, I do want to give some background into Insight into who we are. We are a company that specializes in remote tank monitoring solutions for the LPG, refined fuels, and fuel oil industries. One of our coin mottos is made by propane dealers for propane dealers. So a lot of the personnel behind the scenes here are veterans of the industry. And so with over 100 years of combined industry experience, we offer industry-leading SkyTracker Unlimited monitoring solutions, which is satellite-based monitoring, and we'll soon have cellular-based monitoring as well. We also have the One Tank dashboard, which is what we are largely talking about in this presentation. And together, combined, this creates the industry's first storage monitoring solution. That's right, it's not necessarily the tank monitoring solution, but storage monitoring. So as we are turning propane tank monitoring upside down, we are coming at it from the top of the tank down rather than the bottom of the tank up. And we will describe a little bit more about that, what that means here coming up. A little bit more about us is we are somewhat of tank monitoring pioneers for the propane industry. Believe it or not, the first tank monitor was developed by us, as far as we know, way back in 1988. My father was working at Ferrogas at the time. Him and a colleague started with this idea, connecting a monitor to a phone line and got it to work way back then. Obviously, the technology wasn't quite there back in the late 80s, was not ready to bring it to market, but they sat on the idea for a while and brought SkyTracker to market in the early 2000s, about 15 years later. When we did that, here are just some of the first, just a few of them that we were the first to do and really set the stage for how tank monitoring is done now. So a lot of these are normal and a lot of these are kind of expected out of every tank monitoring company. But we were really the first ones, and these were kind of industry game changers at the time. We were the first to bring a direct-to-satellite tank monitor to market. We were the first to, the next three really are all kind of combined. We were the first to bring an on-site onboard degree day recorder, Julian day logs, and the onboard SkyBrain processor. So basically what that means is we're the first ones to have really a computer with calculations and algorithms and memory saved on the device itself. And so it is tracking temperature and on-site degree days for every location, and it logs it all and is stored in our servers. We're the first ones to bring out-of-ordinary event notifications, so text and email alerts. We were the first to bring color-coded, at-a-glance dashboard with battery level and cutaway tank views. We were the first to bring API integrations and CSV and Excel download files, so integrating the data in with your accounting and routing providers, such as QuickBooks or RCC or Blue Cow or Ads, just to name a few. And then we were the first ones to have temperature compensation algorithms approved by national weights and measurement standards. So this means that our product can act as a meter and actually is approved by national weights and measurements to use to bill according to usage. And that's kind of a key component to this whole One Tank program, which is the next thing that we are the first to bring to market, is a tertiary fuel supply billing program. In other words, it is the storage monitoring program. Because we are from the industry, and we're not just a outside tank monitoring technology company coming in to provide a solution. We are from the propane industry trying to provide a solution for the industry. We struggle with a lot of the same issues that you face today. The standard ones that everybody's struggling with and trying to solve is efficiency and bobtail routing, gallons per stop, gallons per mile, really maximizing those, customer retention and customer growth, and the sizing of customer storage. All those things are things we've struggled with. In addition to that, we've also been through some of the harsh winters and supply interruptions and shortages that you've faced recently, most likely, or you did back in the 2013-14 winter, things like that. So we've been there, we've been through it in one way or another. So we have quite a bit of experience and insight into key events like that. Before we dive into one tank and the product and how it all comes together, I want to set a kind of a baseline on some statistics based on the State of the Industry survey that LP Gas Magazine did a few years back. Over 3,200 propane and refined fuel dealers were polled nationwide. Also, end users were polled during this as well. And it was reported in U.S. gallons and U.S. dollars in standard gallons. So while the numbers are in this report are in U.S. dollars and standard gallons, they can be applied to markets in other countries using monetary exchange rates and metric conversions. If you would like for us to provide those, we certainly can. Just shoot us an email or give us a call. What the survey found was that these are the top 5 things that top the list as far as customer concerns go. So these are end users, your customers. Their concerns were lower prices, flexible payment options, dependable tank monitoring and refilling, quick response to problems, and predictable prices. The demographics of these were primarily residential. This obviously makes up a large chunk. So it's a very important part of the business as far as the average propane distributor is concerned. Next size, about 10% is agricultural and about 7 to 8% commercial. Then you have a few other smaller items in there as well. So just how important are these customers? These are the residential customers. 72% of those propane sales are coming from the residential customers. So it's very important. With that said, your residential customer loyalty is crucial. Obviously, retail customers loyalty as well. That's actually a typo. It should say residential customer. And surprisingly enough, lower prices was at the bottom of the survey. That was not the first thing that customers were concerned about. And about 74% of the survey's respondents believed that they lost customers due to price, when in actuality, the average loss was less than 1%. So theoretically, the price you charge is controllable. You can set your price as you see fit, but being practical, the floor is determined by your cost and the ceiling is dictated by your competition, unless you offer a value-added service or other ancillary services like tank monitoring or like one tank. So it's simple enough, but it's not cheap. So let's take a look at how to give the customer what the customer wants, but to do it efficiently and effectively for you. Let's take a look at your delivery costs. Looking at a few different examples here. This is using a cost of delivery of $75 and a margin per gallon of 95 cents. This is obviously, you can plug in your own numbers here and come up with your own calculations, but this probably isn't the first time you've seen this or have looked into this, but obviously short fills are going to not make you much profit. So if you only deliver 100 gallons, you're only making $20 on a $75 cost of delivery. So you really want to focus on these 300 to 400 gallon drops, and this is based on a 500 gallon or 1,000 gallon residential tank. That we're just kind of basing those off of the averages for this example. If we want to look at another scenario, this is one at a $95 cost of delivery with a 95-cent margin per gallon still. And if you do a short fill of 100 gallons, you're actually breaking even, so you're not making any money there. So again, we want to really focus on that sweet spot of more gallons delivered per stop. So the 300 to 400 gallon range, you're raking in $200 to $300 with profit on that compared to breaking even. So, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that you want to deliver more and really reduce your exposure to short fills and will calls of that nature. So one more scenario is a $110 cost of delivery. So we're just providing a few different examples because we've heard different numbers all across the board. So it really depends on your area, your region, and your own routing plan and everything that you have going on. So just a few different scenarios. In this case, the short fill of 100 gallons, you actually lose money. So if you do a lot of these, you're not going to be in business very long. So definitely want to avoid those and still stick to the maximum drops of 300 to 400 gallons. One thing that can help with this, obviously, is tank monitoring. And there's a lot of tank monitoring choices out there. The different kinds of tank monitors that are available are cellular, Wi-Fi, satellite, and RF. We offer satellite, and we are getting ready to offer a cellular version of it. So those are the two most popular, I would say. There are a few other RF and Wi-Fi options out there. The key factors that go into figuring out which kind of tank monitoring choice you want to go with are typically cost. And we would argue that it's more than just your upfront cost. So there are some very, very inexpensive tank monitors on the market, but what is your cost of ownership over a period of time? I think that's really the key metric you want to look at for those. So you may be getting a deal up front, but you may not be over the course of a 5 or 10 year period. The coverage of the tank monitors needs to be taken into concern as well. Cellular works most places, but not everywhere. Wi-Fi only works within range of a router. RF works at certain places, but you usually have to have a repeater or a antenna nearby. And so there's some coverage issues there. Satellite, you pretty much don't have any coverage issues. As long as it has a clear shot of the sky, it works. So the only things that really interfere with it would be like concrete or metal. So the unit would have to be placed, underneath or between concrete and metal or something like that. So that's a pretty rare occasion for a propane tank to be in that kind of environment. So that doesn't happen very often. A few other considerations would be product reliability. There has been some issues with that in the market and in the industry. Customer service is obviously a key important thing. If you have issues, you're putting electronics out into the elements, you're going to have issues. So customer service is really vital to when those issues come up, what are they going to do for you? And then at the end of it all, where's the value? What value does it bring over the course of a 5-year period, a 10-year period? What features does it bring and how can you capitalize on it? So not all tank monitors are equal. I think there's so many options that have come to the surface over recent years. It's really hard to differentiate all of them from the rest. So it's kind of easy to just group all tank monitoring companies in one lump and say they're all tank monitoring. They just do it, a little bit different. But that's not always true. So you really want to dig into what each option can offer you. These are just some screenshots from our website portal. So kind of what traditional tank monitoring looks like. This is ours where you have a product level history where you can just see the date stamp and the the percentage level within that tank over a course of time. And then that can then be input into this graph that you see. So you can see a line graph showing the usage over a course of time. You can clearly see the activity of the tank. You have a color-coded levels page where you can, at a glance, see which tanks are good, which tanks are low, which tanks are getting low, where's the battery life. All those things are in one easy-to-view page. And then this one is kind of unique to us, where we have a little cutaway tank view, and we have our degree day chart and gallons used per this fiscal year chart, battery voltage, those kinds of things. So the traditional tank monitoring, it provides just the liquid levels in the tanks. It does help prevent outages and short fills. It improves routing when it's done correctly. It can send alerts by text or email to the homeowner as well as the propane marketer. And overall, it provides helpful data to better understand your business and improve it. So tank monitoring traditionally is good, especially when it works. So if you know how to apply it, you can really make it go a long way. And overall, it reduces your operational costs and can improve service. So when you really have a decent amount of quantity, a decent portion of your business on tank monitoring, you can have efficient scheduling and routing. You'll have reliable data. It'll help you schedule your maximum gallon deliveries, really capitalizing on those 300, 400 gallon drops. And then the fewest stops per miles driven. So that's a key metric we've been looking at a lot lately, is really reducing wear and tear on the trucks and really maximizing on the amount of gallons delivered per mile metric. So we'll explain a little bit more of that here in a little bit. But even though tank monitoring has helped with all these things and has really proven to be of value in a lot of those areas, there's not a very high adoption rate within the propane industry. These are our own views as to why that is. We may be wrong, but these are the things that we have encountered. One is the perceived value proposition. So for a lot of propane marketers, they just don't see the value in adding tank monitoring or adding a lot of tank monitoring. They might see the value in having it on a few remote tanks or erratic usage tanks. But instead of putting tank monitors on 80% of the tanks, they may only do it on 10% of their tanks. We see that quite a bit. So they're only perceiving part of the value, in our opinion. The reliability of the technology is a key factor as well. A lot of companies have had issues keeping their products reliable in the field. That has improved over time and is continually getting better. So as it was a new, really a new thing for the industry. So there was a learning curve. I think we're coming out of that learning curve now to where the reliability is much better overall. I think there's still a little bit ways to go based on what I've heard from other companies. But I know from our own end, our reliability has gone up substantially over the past decade. So that is definitely a key factor. And then the final thing is stuck in old ways. Our industry is very old-fashioned. A lot of these guys, a lot of you have been doing your business the same way probably for decades. And maybe it's a family business and your family's been doing the business this way for, several decades. So you know what works and it's worked for a long time. You don't really want to introduce anything new, or you don't want to really change that, or you don't see why you should change it when things are working pretty well as they are. And that's fair if depending on what kind of issues you do run with and how efficient you have your business already. I think we can make an argument that it could always be better, and we can definitely help with that if you're interested, and if you would let us try to show you what we think and what we have here. So even though tank monitoring has not been adopted that great, there's not a very high adoption rate so far. It can help with spikes in demand, which causes problems in the infrastructure and in the industry. But it only solves part of the problem. It doesn't really help a lot. It can make things better. It can make you more efficient, but tank monitoring does not really solve anything when it comes to the whole industry infrastructure problem where there's spikes in demand when everyone is trying to get product at once. It'll cause these price spikes. It will cause long lines at terminals. I've heard some truckers have had to wait 8 to 10 hours to fill their truck. Some have even had to spend the night and fill their truck the next day. It'll cause we have supply interruptions at various terminals, and ultimately leads to gas outages, and really ultimately leads to lost customers. They will switch to natural gas or other forms of energy whenever they can't feel reliable, when they can't rely on the propane industry to solve their problems whenever they need it the most. So tank monitoring helps with a lot of things, but it does not really answer this kind of question. And so if you've been paying attention to the news at all, which surely you have, unless you're living underneath a rock. So there's a pandemic going on right now, and the big MO that everybody's pushing, healthcare officials are pushing, the CDC is pushing, is to use protective measures to flatten the curve of the healthcare system capacity. So using protective measures will level out this number of cases over time and spread it out over time to where the healthcare system can adequately help and adequately sustain over a period of time, whereas they can't if there's this huge spike in cases all at once. Now, using this exact same concept toward the propane industry, we're really trying to do the same thing, because the same thing happens almost every year. 75% of propane is sold between December and February, which is the coldest months out of the year typically. So naturally, that's when the most propane is going to be consumed. And so this is just a line graph from the Midwest for 2014 through 2018. As you can see, there's a spike that happens, during fall grain harvest, and then there's a spike that happens during winter heating. So really the rest of the year, it's a pretty steep drop off. I mean, you're looking at a cliff on this side and then a cliff on this side. So you really have a couple months out of the year where it's really pedal to the metal for the industry, and it puts a strain on the propane infrastructure, as most of the propane is refined and housed down in the Gulf of Mexico and Mont Belvieu, Texas, and we're trying to get all of that product from a warm climate down south to where it's used all the way up north. And so there's a lot of limitations that come with that. So if we use the same concept as the flatten the curve, if we use one tank on enough tanks across the industry and in your own business, we can flatten this curve. We can pre-fill a lot more tanks, backing it up into October, September, August. And then we can really alleviate a lot of the pressure going into those critical months of December, January, and February. And then we can also extend it out a little bit into March, April, May. And so the one tank program will put the customer on consumption billing, and that opens the storage capacity of that tank that you already own in your control. So in these early months before winter gets here, you can go out and pre-fill all your tanks before winter even gets here. And then you can bill your customers throughout the winter as they use it. And if there's a price spike, well, you bought low and you can sell high. Even if there's not, you're prepared and you're not having to deliver propane on icy roads and in inclement weather conditions and things of that nature. You're not needing to work overtime and sit at these long terminal lines and everything like that. So we believe that this can really help the industry as a whole avoid a lot of these supply interruptions. So what we really want to focus on here, and to kind of better describe the situation and the concept that we're trying to promote here. One tank in our tertiary storage application really focuses on the yellow portions of the tanks here. And to briefly describe what you're looking at here, this center tank is essentially what one tank is. This is a digital representation of the storage capacity you have in the field right now within assets that you already own. And so how this works is when you enroll your customers on a consumption billing type of program, it allows you to retain ownership of that fuel and gives you access to that space in the tank, allowing you to fill when it's convenient for you. So you can proactively fill instead of reacting to a will call situation or whenever their budget can handle it. So you can fill these tanks ahead of time and then bill out as they consume. And so what this means is if you can take advantage of this on enough tanks, the return on your investment and the return storage made available to you is substantial. So this one tank represents several tanks, and each one of these tanks around it actually represents several tanks as well. So this is broken down into routes and bulk storage plants. So in a glimpse, you can see how much storage capacity you have and where it's located. And then the concept here, whenever this is all said and done within the dashboard, you can start at the high level of one tank, and then you can drill down into routes, and then you can drill down even further into each individual tank and what the storage capacity and levels are there. So this is really the amount of storage that you can gain from this is pretty substantial depending on your throughput and depending on the assets and tanks you have in the field. Based on industry averages provided by, I believe it's the same survey from LP Gas Magazine, they stated that the average propane distributor has just under 2,500 tanks, and that's based on a 500-gallon basis again. And so if you look at 80% capacity of 500-gallon tanks and 2,500 of those, you're looking at just under 1 million gallons of storage total. Now, going into the 2013 and 2014 winter, about 40% of customer tanks went into that winter on the bottom half. So if that's the case, then out of the almost 1 million gallons of storage, if 40% of those are 50% or less, you're looking at gaining about 400,000 gallons of tertiary storage that you did not have before. So if you compare that to adding bulk storage plants, how much money does it cost to gain 400 gallons of storage with bulk storage? It's a pretty hard thing to achieve. So this is a much more cost-effective way to gain access to storage that you already own. You just can't access it right now. There hasn't been a user-friendly way to access tertiary storage until now. So if we can flatten the curve, we can fill these tanks before winter, and we can avert supply interruptions and avert cost increases. You will want to enroll your customers in consumption billing. You will want to change your business model from a reactive mode to a proactive mode. And in turn, you will increase your return on investment and increase your customer satisfaction. This will also allow you to enable access to tertiary storage, and it will also allow you to endure events that cause supply interruptions, such as harsh winters, long winters, late harvest, or even the COVID-19 pandemic where production is at an all-time low. And to compare this with other modes of doing your operations here, if you look at the degree day and Julian day delivery system that the propane industry has basically been structured on for decades, it's good. I mean, it works. It works for the most part. It's what has worked for decades, has about a 60% ROI. If you use the traditional mode of remote tank monitoring, it's even better, getting you around an 88, 89% ROI. And then this new model, the one tank model using tertiary storage, the ROI is substantially more, almost at 125%. Now, we have the calculations and everything behind this, so if you'd like to see them, by all means, send us a request, send us an email. We can send those to you. One example of this is from a customer of ours here in the Midwest. They have been a longtime customer of ours, having several dozen sky trackers in the field, maybe 100 or 200 units. I'm not sure exactly, but they have several sky trackers, but they have not implemented the one tank tertiary storage program yet. We have been talking to him about it. He has been considering it, but prior to this winter, he had not set it up yet. Basically, what happened going into October and November, the late harvest season came, he had price spikes. According to his own calculations, if he would have pre-bought before that happened and rode out that price spike, he would have made, let me rephrase that, he would have saved $152,000. So he left just over $150,000 on the table by not using this program. All the tools were there. Everything is there ready to go for him. He just has not implemented this into his accounting and his delivery system. And then if we compare this to adding bulk storage tanks, so the standard 30,000 gallon tank, I have heard prices all over the place. I've heard some prices as low as 60,000. I've heard prices as high as 150,000. They're really all across the board. We picked one kind of in the middle. So obviously this varies depending on your situation, but it's a good comparable. So where you spend this amount of money and you get about 24 or 25,000 gallons of fillable capacity out of that expense or investment. If you compare that to one tank and these similar types of investments, you can see the differences in the return of storage you get for the amounts of money. So if you only do 50 one tank enabled tanks, this is based off of the standard 500 gallon residential tanks, you're looking at about $12,000, a little over $12,000. You have about 20,000 gallons of fillable capacity total. If you gain an average of 40% fill rate off of those 50 tanks, then you open up 10,000 gallons of tertiary storage. If you average 60%, then you're looking at 15,000 gallons of storage. And the numbers just keep going up. So if you do 500 tanks, it costs you a little bit more than adding a 30,000 gallon storage tank. But the fillable capacity for pretty close to the same level of investment, you're looking at 24,000 gallons for a 30,000 gallon tank. For 500 one tank enabled tanks, you're looking at 200,000 gallons of fillable capacity. If you average 40% fills gained across that, you're looking at 100,000 gallons, or 60%, 150,000 gallons. So you're looking at, between 100,000 and 150,000 gallons of storage gained. And to add to that, one other difference between a 30,000 gallon bulk storage tank or even 90,000 gallon, whatever you're using, even if you have it in the storage tank, you still have to get it to your customer tanks. So there's still one more step in the process. But whenever you're looking at the one tank tanks, it's already there. So your storage is already where the end user site is going to be. So that means you can utilize the storage before harsh winter weather hits, and you're not having to deliver these in the peak seasons of winter. Just some further justification. This is more the political and association side. The U.S. Senate and state utility commissions, U.S. representatives like Marsha Blackburn, Al Franken, Doug Funderburk, all of these have weighed in on the matter and have recommended the use of tertiary storage at end user locations. I don't believe it's gotten any traction within the industry because there hasn't really been a way to utilize it, not in a cost-effective and manageable way until now. Just a few other, points of note here. It's it's a workaround of the Jones Act. That's always been kind of a thorn in our side. It alleviates the world supply and logistical concerns. So there's a lot of higher level justification for this. If you're interested, as just kind of a reference for those. In addition to one tank and tertiary storage gaining and gained access, you're also using tank monitors. So you get all the other benefits and features of your standard tank monitoring included. So you also get global coverage, cellular and satellite connectivity. You get a mobile app for your end users, your customers, to access their tanks and communicate with you. It will increase engagement and loyalty with your customers. You'll get GPS location tracking with each tank. You get text and email alerts for out of ordinary events, such as critical low or overfill or time for delivery. You have monitored levels and temperatures 24/7. And it's all in a simple and intuitive system. And you will have increased revenue, valuation, efficiency, and winter resilience. This is just a snapshot of the one tank dashboard. It's still under development, but it gives you an idea of what's coming. You have the standard items like a embedded map feature where you can locate all your tanks. It's color coded based on capacity, so you'll see at a glance which tanks in which areas have the most availability for storage fill. It has your usage graphs and everything there. That's all pretty standard for tank monitoring. You have customer inquiries up in the top right, so that is coming from the mobile app. So your customers can contact you, and it will come up right there on the main dashboard. And then all your customer info will be saved there as well. These are just fake numbers that we just kind of threw in here for example purposes, but the OSE analysis is the optimal storage effectiveness, or overall storage effectiveness is what it's called. This is a calculation that we have created and frankly still are creating. It's kind of a work in progress, but this is a way to track your progress and almost a gamified way to track your business and your storage efficiency. So there's a few different factors that are considered in there that we can go through a different time, but it's just kind of a neat little way to show you how well you're doing. And a lot of that will be based on data and customer feedback as we go forward, where exactly that sweet spot is, looking at gallons per stop and miles driven per gallon delivered. Those kinds of factors are all going to be included in there. And so all those will be graded based on the information and data that is recorded from your sky trackers. Then you, of course, have your alert statuses, and you have your one tank, and then your routes, so you could be able to drill down. So at a glance, you'll be able to see all of your storage outlets. And this is just the one tank dashboard. So you will also have your levels page, your tank management page, everything else that comes with your standard tank monitoring. It's all there as well. This is all just in addition to. So next, just showing how it all kind of comes together, bringing all the pieces together here. All the data is continuously monitored via satellite or via cellular, and is transmitting the fuel levels and other information periodically. It also transmits when an abnormal pattern or event is detected. All that data can be accessed and managed on any device through our database. You can also integrate all of that data into another database, such as your accounting provider like RCC or ADS or Blue Cow. You can also implement a CSV file or Excel file that's downloaded directly from our servers. You can upload that into your local accounting programs, such as QuickBooks. So that is a feature as well. And then all of that, in turn, translates into how you deliver. So it's if you can deliver in a proactive manner, it eliminates a lot of your reactive will call situations, which creates a lot of waste. So this eliminates wasted stops. It saves time and energy, and it saves fuel and wear and tear on trucks. and you retain ownership of the fuel at the end user locations. And then the process as far as setting this up is pretty simple. Obviously, it starts with installation. So we have to install the hardware onto the tanks first, as you would with your traditional tank monitoring scenario. Training is the next step. Since we have some veterans here from the propane industry on staff, they would be providing some of the training. We have lots of documentation and materials. And we've also been partnering with a couple of consulting firms that would be very valuable in this. So your success is our success. So we want to make sure that you are understanding and utilizing all the features and all the possible benefits available to you. Next is the administration part. That's where we start connecting via API or CSV file. So really connecting the dots between the operation side and the accounting side. We also would need to send a notice to the state or province for divisions of weights and measures. So since we aren't getting around the meter ticket is still the benchmark. We just have to let the state or province know what we're doing, so that if they get questioned on it, they know that we're not doing something shady. We're still going through the meter ticket. One of the benefits of our program and our proprietary algorithms for temperature compensation is that the reconciliation report will be much closer. So even though we're still going through the meter tickets, the amount that we bill on a monthly basis is much more accurate than a lot of the competing solutions that are on the market. And then finally, for the administration part is the customer tertiary storage agreement. We have templates of these that are ready that you're welcome to. You can also create your own. But it's basically an agreement between you and your customers, acknowledging the tertiary storage part of the tank and the consumption billing part, especially if the tank is a customer-owned tank. So obviously you would need their permission to be able to use that, which historically we've not ever really run into any issues from end users who are stingy about things like that. So final step is reporting and action, quite frankly. It's really comes down to the biannual settlements or reconciliation reports and your monthly billing and your temperature compensated meter deliver tickets and your benchmarks for the monthly billing. So all that is really the process for setting up the administration and really the back end of things. And then after this, we will always be available. We have customer support always here and ready to go. That is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for watching. I am doing this out of my home, as are many people during this pandemic time and on the lockdown. So I apologize if you hear some babies or screaming kids or anything in the background. I think there was a dump truck that came by earlier. So I apologize for any distractions there. But if you have any further questions or comments, please reach out to us, www.one-tank.com, or you can email us at info@one-tank.com. And we're also on the virtual propaneexpo.com. We're there as a premier vendor. And I believe we are exhibiting again. I believe there's a second round of the expo coming up at the end of May, so we should be involved there as well. So keep an eye out for us, and feel free to reach out with any questions or comments. Thank you all.